Alrighty. What's going on, folks? Sorry I'm late. I was having some technical difficulties. So, my name's Myles Young. Glad to see y'all. Uh, we're here for Typescript today. Yes. So, right now I'm an engineer. I came from Treehouse not too long ago. I was part of the tech degree program over there, so it was really cool. Glad to have the chance just to be able to share some of the things I know with students who are learning from Treehouse. Is really cool. So without further ado, we'll just talk about what TypeScript is really quick. So I kind of put together this workshop for today just to talk about some of the capabilities of TypeScript. I'm saying TypeScript a lot. What is it? It's this language that Microsoft made to give you typing capabilities in JavaScript, because if any of you have ever worked with JavaScript before, then you would know that it's not a strongly typed language and you can kind of just do whatever you want. So it's almost adding some safeguards to it. And the more you work with TypeScript, the more you'll hopefully learn to appreciate how typing could really enhance your JavaScript code. So just going through with this workshop, though, we're going to talk about a few things. So like, what are some of the constructs that TypeScript uses to help you actually type your code? And when I say type your code, what I'm saying is if I make a variable and it's supposed to be a string, then it's gonna be a string. Long story short, so we could rely on that and we could expect that using TypeScript for sure. We get to check out some cool features that we're using in our IDE. And for this workshop in particular, we're going to be using Visual Studio Code because it's just easy like that. And you don't have to do much TypeScript setup to get it going. Any prerequisites for this workshop, though, you'll probably need to have Node.js installed on your machine and also Node Package Manager, because that's how you would get this workshop running. If you want to follow along, please check out the GitHub repo for this. I'm not quite sure where to share it at right now, but if you go to github.com slash milesz123 and then you look for, wow, this is so long, ts-workshop/tree/main/part1. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, y'all. I made a really long repo name, but forgive me. So there are some cool features that come with TypeScript also. For example, the error compiler that you will see. Right now, if you were to run a JavaScript app and you want to find out how your code is blowing up, if it's blowing up, then you're not going to know that until runtime. So what the TypeScript compiler does is it analyzes your code beforehand and it'll alert you and point you to the exact line where your code is blowing up if you're typing your code. So there are also some more capabilities with TypeScript. It almost acts as a form of self-documentation, and you'll see that as we go along with our code. It's really, really handy. There are some errors that'll show up. Let's say if you have some type mismatch errors or something like that, then they provide some pretty handy messages to help you get that straightened out. And yeah, there are also some really cool features that come along with using this language attached native to Visual Studio Code, like autocomplete and type hinting whenever you hover over things. Super handy, and it makes coding actually a lot faster. Even though sometimes it may seem like you're writing more code, it's for the greater good. So yeah, I've talked a lot. If you have any problems running this workshop from the GitHub or following along, please feel free to ask some questions and I will get them answered more towards the end of the workshop. All right. So part 1, bada boom, bada bing. So right now we're not really doing much, and I'm not gonna run this because I actually broke this about 5 minutes before I started. So forgive me for that too. But the code here itself is the main thing that we're checking out. So in TypeScript, there is this construct and it's called an interface. And any of you that are familiar with computer science principles, then understanding the concept of an interface will come pretty easily for you. But if you're a beginner, then the easiest way to explain what a interface is, it just defines the shape of something that you're going to be using. So if I make the design sheet for Air Jordan 11s and they need to have patent leather on the soles, then they better have patent leather on the soles. The interface is the enforcer that's making sure we have the properties we need to work with. All right, cool. So now that we got that in, we could take a look at this looks like regular JavaScript code, and it is, but you'll see how not only how Visual Studio Code could give you this type hinting capability, but just sort of help you see what you're working with here. So we make an array here, and we call it initial players. And there's some backstory to why we're using players here. It's because Mr. Gill at Treehouse, he made an excellent workshop for React hooks, and I suggest you check that out because this TypeScript workshop is a remix of that to basically implement TypeScript in React. And that's like the whole theme of this workshop. But right now this is just part 1 of just showing off TypeScript. So anyway, when we hover over our declaration here for our variable, we could see that initial players has string brackets. That's a type. And long story short, whenever you want to examine what a type is, this is saying this is an array of strings. And we could tell because there are 2 brackets that trail after our type here. So array of strings. You could look that up if you get confused at all. But boom, this is what we have. Now, as we go down a little bit further, we could create our methods here. And what's happening with our method is we're basically just taking in an array of strings, and we need to return an object that conforms to our player interface. So the player interface needs to have a name, a score property, and an ID property, and they all have their assigned types to them. So generate players is just going to map over our players array here of strings, because that's what it's accepting, an array of strings. And we could just return an array of player objects. If you're starting to get the theme here. So if you're looking at functions and you want to declare a return type, let's just say I take out the type for now, right? We're starting to look a little bit more like regular JavaScript, but generate players could still infer what type we're returning here. So it doesn't say player anymore, but it'll describe the shape of the type that we're returning, the shape of the object that we're returning. So it's pretty handy there. So we're gonna just press Control Z to add our player array type back. So cool. That's basically it. That's the workshop. No. No. So right now we have players and we want to console log it. And this is a Node.js application. It doesn't really do anything fancy. If you were to run npm run dev, then this would log out to your terminal or something like that. I'm not going to do it now because it's going to break. I told y'all I broke it. I'm sorry. But let's check out something interesting here. So we said in our generate players function that we need to pass in an array of strings in order for this stuff to work. Cool. So what's going to happen if I add a number to our initial players array? We get an error down here on line 33. And the reason for that, let's check out the error message here. So argument of type string or a number. It's an array of either strings or numbers. Long story short, that is not assignable to parameter of type array of strings. So we know, we already talked about that. So the problem is that Typescript is basically catching our fumble here, saying, dude, like we were expecting strings, but you gave us a number somewhere down the line, and we can't work with that. So technically the code would still work, but it's not. If this were like some really big production application and you could literally only take strings, this would definitely blow up, right? So how do we fix it? Well, we could easily just, return an array of strings here, or you could change your type for the players array defined here. You could say it could be an array of strings or numbers. You could do that. But now we have another problem. Returning generated players. So this is something interesting. We have some more typing that's getting applied here. So if we take a look at our player object, we have a name that's supposed to be a string. Score is a number. ID is a number. So because in our parameters, it could be an array of strings or numbers, Typescript can't guarantee that this name property is actually going to be a string. So it gets kind of crazy just how deep your code could really go here. So yeah, long story short, if we want to fix it, let's just go back to an array of strings, and then everything should be fine here. So that's just taking a look at the Typescript compiler, but you see how it's pretty neat because you could catch your errors before you even run your code in the browser. And it's super helpful because if you're able to catch your errors before running the code, you could knock out a whole bunch of issues if you're running something in production that's being served to a lot of users, right? So that's important. It also works as documentation because when I look at this generate players function, aside from the JS.doc comments, if I hover over it, I can tell that it takes a parameter and it has to be a specific type, an array of strings, and it's going to return a specific type. And you could tell that by, this arrow, and it's saying it's returning an array of players. We could define what our player type is, and we could add to it whenever we want. We could take from it. We'll just have to adjust our parameters at that point. But it's super descriptive, and it's almost as if you can't go wrong. Now, this is beginner level stuff, so as you start using Typescript more, you'll start to see more advanced features. But it's super duper handy, and because of this strong typing that we're applying here, we get some good features like autocomplete. So let's say I remove the type here. If I remove the type for our players array, now we see that this is a parameter of type any. So it could be anything. We don't know what it is. So if I do players array dot, I don't get anything. I I have to think about what it is that I'm passing in, and then I have to access whatever methods that are available for that specific type. So like if it were a string, I could say to lowercase or something like that. If it were a number, I could call some number method, blah blah blah. But here's something cool that we get with typing. So we know that players is an array because we told it it's going to be an array. So now we could apply some array methods to it easily. So if we look at it again, players array dot, and now we get that autocomplete feature. I don't know if, I'm pretty sure every editor should come with this, but I like VSC and it's super easy to use. So anyway, you get access to a whole bunch of array methods, and it just makes coding a lot easier because I don't think anybody knows every single JavaScript array method. So it's good to be able to look through and see what's available to you. And that's just some of the power that typing gives us, which is pretty neat. Honestly, that's pretty much it for part 1. Wasn't anything too crazy, I hope, and I'm hoping that you got a pretty decent understanding of how it works so far and the potential of how it could help you in your code. Again, not gonna run it because I broke it, so that's my bad. But this would be a good time to be able to ask some questions. And give me a second because I have to get adjusted. My bad, y'all. Give me a second, please. If y'all couldn't see this whole time, I am deeply sorry. Oh my gosh. This stream life is different, y'all. My bad. This is so funny. take a looky here. All right, I've given y'all like so much time of silence. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah, so going through this TypeScript workshop, I know it's a bit of a new concept and things could somewhat be a little confusing sometimes, but especially if you're a newer developer. But the way that I got started using TypeScript, I think somebody just ended up showing it to me one day. And I think I just caught a little bit of interest in it and just decided to give it a try. And the first time I used it, I hated it because I couldn't understand the error messages. So, yeah, it was a mess. Hopefully, walking through this, you didn't get too confused or confused at all. It'd be amazing if you just perfectly got it, but we're human. So, if you would like to continue on just learning a bit more about TypeScript, the part 2 of this workshop is going to be done in React. And if any of you are familiar with React, it's just a framework that's like freaking awesome and I love it. And it's super widely used by a plethora of companies. So you'd be pretty well off if you knew React. And like I was saying, Gil, Treehouse instructor, he made a workshop for learning React hooks. I think that's what the workshop is called, React hooks. If you go through that, then you'll get the gist of what part 2 would be, which is essentially implementing TypeScript into React. And when we step over into React world using TypeScript there, things get much more powerful. The code isn't much different, besides a few syntax changes here and there, but it's a super powerful tool. And I think that I could say from personal experience and from talking with other developers that implementing TypeScript in your code is not only super helpful for other developers to read and implement, but it also makes for a better developer experience because of some of the features that I just showed you, like autocomplete and type hinting and the documentation portion. And you could catch errors in your code. Deep down in your code, TypeScript will still find errors for you, which is great. I can say that there are a few downsides, like the error messaging, but that shouldn't be too much of a dent. Yeah. So anyway, hopefully y'all got something good out of this workshop. Feel free to hit me up. You could find my GitHub or you could hit me up on LinkedIn. Just look for Myles Young. Pretty sure you'll find me. I don't look myself up on LinkedIn. But anyway, thanks. So I hope y'all had a great time. I'll catch you later.